This episode is the one where I finally deal with the wiring underneath the fuel tank, because I've checked everything in the fuel tank and there's no issue there, but the bike is not starting. So I'm going to pull all the connectors apart and clean them up. Every pin is coming out and they're going to be cleaned. Every wire is going to be cleaned and checked for any cracks. And if I do find any cracks, I've got this nice clear heat shrink to go over the top, seal it up, and then some nice new loom tape to tighten up all the loom and make it easier for me to get this fuel tank on and off, because in the past all the wires have been sticking out here, there and everywhere, and like causing an issue every time I put the fuel tank back on. So I'm not going to bang on any further about it. Let's just get started.
Before I can start stripping back the wires, I need to cut off all the cable ties that are holding the cables to each other and to the bike. Then I can release all the connectors that are clipped to each other and to the top of the frame. With everything unclipped, I've just had a bit of a nose around the wiring loom itself just to see what's going on, and this is the first bit of insulation I pulled at and it just came straight off in my hand. Obviously there's a lot more, this is just a really small part of it, but look how bad that is perished, just goes to show I needed to do this job.
First step's complete then. The zip ties have been cut off and the connectors have been pulled apart, and none of them are broken. Bear in mind that they are old and they are a little bit brittle in some areas, but none of them are broken. So a bit of cleaning, hopefully they'll go back on without breaking as well. And there may be a few more connectors that I've not found just yet, but I will find them as I start digging in deeper to everything when I pull all the tape off. But for now, I need to start cleaning everything and start pulling the pins out.
So I started off by degreasing the frame and wiping it down before moving on to the wiring harness and starting to peel back of that old wiring loom tape. And with a chunk of that tape moved out the way, I give my first connector block a bit of a scrub down before moving on to removing the pins.
So I've just done a bit of a test pull. I've got these little keys that allow you to pull the little clips or the little pins out of the connectors. They're pin removers, and I'll put a link to them in the description, because this is one that I bought just in case, and it's got the right stuff in it. I didn't really know what I needed, so I just bought the biggest kit that I could buy. I've found that this red one here is the red one that fits over the pin, and then press, and then they come out like so. What you find is there's little hooks on these little pins and they have to be pressed in a certain way. So by pushing them up, you kind of flatten them, and then this circular thing goes over the top and just releases them enough for them to be pulled out. Obviously you've got to use a little bit of force, but not too much. You've just got to be careful with how much force you're putting on them. And when you put them back in, again, pressing them in, you've got to push them in so far, giving them a little bit of a pull just to make sure they are seated and they're not going to fall out the moment you put the new clip, or sort of the other clip, on top of them. But I'm going to do them one at a time so that I don't lose track of which ones I've used, and obviously I don't end up putting the wrong pins in the wrong position. So I've got the blue one out first of all. The blue one's in the top left corner, and to give it a clean, I can see there's no like cracks on the insulation, and a little bit of a clean, put it back in. Then I'm going to move on to the next one and continue this saga, and it's going to take a long time. Hopefully if you're going to do this to your BMW, you've got a bit of knowledge now, because I've not really found much about this on the internet. So yeah, let's crack on.
So I did. I started by pushing a pin out, grab the wire, give it a bit of a wipe down, give the pin a bit of a wipe down, then check the wire for any cracks before putting it back into the connector block. Once it was seated, I moved on to the next one, pushed the pin out again, there it is, give it a bit of a wipe down, give the pin a bit of a wipe down, check the cable again as well for no cracks, then I pushed it back into the connector block and made sure it was seated. Now I'm not repeating the process, I just thought I'd show you this connector block because it's a bit different to that first one I did. It was a little bit harder to undo, but there is a backing part to the connector, and as you can see there, it's holding all the wires in one place. So this allowed me to push all the pins out in one go. It allowed me to clean the wires a lot easier, and I could clean the connector block a lot easier as well. So that was a nice simple connector block, and a lot of them were like this after that first one. You can see there, I just put in the pins back in nice and swiftly, and then after that was done, I pushed that little backing plate back into place, and that was the connector done.
So this is as far as I've got. I've done this complete part of the harness. It's quite a batch of it. This is a lot of the big connectors, and every one of these wires has now been pulled out. The pin has been cleaned up, so it's got a nice shine to it, and the actual connector itself been cleaned down along with the wires everywhere inside, and then it's been covered in contact cleaner, so it's all looking pretty good in there. And if I'm honest, if I just want to blow smoke up my own backside, I've done a pretty good job. It's looking epically clean. So that's one part done there. The next parts I'm going to be doing are these parts down here. I'm going to chase this wiring back as well and start dealing with this. Then you got the right hand side over here as well. This all needs to be dealt with. I've put these little flat blade screwdrivers here just as a way of holding them. I've got little brushes down there for when I'm doing these, where are they gone? These dirty circles in there. And then I'm using the Tenere for all the cleaning stuff and for all those little keys over there. And my little blade, I can't remember where I put that. Oh, that's on the seat there. So yeah, I think we're getting somewhere, but it's quite late in the evening now, so I'm going to go home, go to sleep for a bit, and then come back tomorrow morning and then finish this up.
So nice and fresh, I started to remove the Motronic unit and the wires that were around that area. Some of them were a bit hidden, so I definitely needed to do this, otherwise I wouldn't be able to put that fresh wiring loom tape around it. And speaking of loom tape, I started to use them to tie up the wires that I had cleaned the night before, and this gave me a bit of satisfaction because I felt like I was going in the right direction. Then I stripped back some more loom tape just to get in there a bit deeper, sprayed a bit of degreaser on the wiring that I had exposed, then give that a bit of a wipe down before loom taping that up as well, and then again gaining more progress. So this is quite a time consuming job, but the result is there and I'm quite happy with it. It looks much better than what it did. The tape looks amazing, the wires underneath the tape are clean and crack free, so that's awesome. All the connectors are cleaned out and the points have been cleaned as well. So again, no worry in my mind that any of this part of the installation is going to cause me issues in the future. This new harness tape is obviously going to protect it and stop it from chafing against anything, so it's all sealed up, it looks good, and I'm really pleased with the job I've done. It's actually turned out better than what I pictured in my mind. I was really expecting it to be a mess, but it's looking really good. So I'm just going to move on to the rest of the bike now. I'm going to do those other fiddly bits that are in the way, and then I'll show you the final result at the end, and hopefully I can try and get this bike started. So the next bit is going to be a lot different to what we've just done, because this is the Hall effect sensor cable, and look at that wiring, nice and cracked. Every single wire is cracked there. There are 5 of them and they've got more than 5 cracks per wire, so that's a bit of sealing to do, but I was kind of expecting it. So there's time now to start digging into this wiring, taking that connector off and pulling the pins out. So I start off by dousing the connector in exposed wires in a degreaser and use a brush to loosen the dirt. Then I use a cloth to wipe it off so I can see what I was dealing with regards to how bad the cracks were. So separating the connector block was the next thing I needed to work out, because it looks like it's a complete unit but there's no obvious way to press the pins out. So I just put my screwdriver in there and tried to separate things slightly without breaking things, obviously. And with a bit of luck I noticed it started to separate, so I just wiggled the screwdriver a bit more and it came apart. Now obviously it doesn't finish there, so the next piece of the puzzle was to try and remove those pink little tabs. There's one on either side of the connector block and they hide the pins. So again, a bit of trial and error and I managed to get them off, but I could have broken them so easy because they're very flimsy. And that's the other pink thing out. See what happens next. These are the silver pins, you can see them there. There's a little triangle apart, you may not be able to see that on the camera. But there's one in there. That's all I do is press that and pull on the wire, and you can see there's a green seal that comes out, and then the pin. The problem with the heat shrink was I could only get it over the pin but not past the green seal, so I've had to make a complete cut in the wiring itself, strip it right back from the pins back to the clear cut, and then put this insulation from the clean cut and feed it right up to that little green rubber seal. So I'm going to shrink those down now one by one, and then I'm going to connect this to that, pull some heat shrink over all of it, heat shrinking all up, and then see what magic comes of it. So I've begun the heat shrinking and it's done a good job at sealing up those cracks. I've got no worries about those whatsoever anymore. So from this bit onwards it was time to break out the thick black heat shrink. Just cut it down to size and slid it over the second part of the wire so that it's out of the way, ready to be pulled up to make the final seal. Then I cut more clear heat shrink for that second part of the wire. Do a little bit of soldering, which to be fair wasn't my finest work, but you get the drift here. It did the job, it held everything in place. And I quite enjoyed it because it's something I've not done since school realistically. So here we go, lots of smoke, lots of fun and lots of connecting up, and then it's a case of pulling the clear heat shrink up over the freshly soldered wires, ready to get some heat on them and then make the seal. And this is a good opportunity to point out that black bit of heat shrink that I put out of the way ready for the final sealing. It's just here. So on with the last of the clear heat shrink in, and that job is going quite nicely. Then it's time to pull that hidden bit of heat shrink up and over the freshly sealed clear heat shrink, and then a bit more heat shrinking of that black heat shrink before doing a bit of connecting the connector back where it should be connected. To put the little pink thing back in, you just put it in from one side. It can only go in from one way. You can see there that it's got a little bit of a tail on it, and then you just slide it in. And that's it. That is it. Nice and clipped in. To finish the job, it's just a case of adding some fresh new loom tape all the way from the black heat shrink up and over the exposed wires that has the clear heat shrink all over it. Then it's just a case of ripping the tape off, tidying up that edge, and I've left just enough space that I can inspect that clear heat shrink in the future, but hopefully I shouldn't have any problems. That's not the best job by any stretch of the imagination, but that is the whole sensor wiring sealed up, so hopefully that should be good. Obviously the proof will be in the pudding when I start the bike up, so with that in mind I'm just going to crack on now, get some more of this tape around the wiring and then get everything back together and fire the bike up. So all the wiring on the right hand side of the bike got dealt with some brand new loom tape, same on the left hand side of the bike, so all the wiring going forward has been dealt with. Then it was the Motronic unit, and then the ABS connection that is obviously not attached to ABS anymore. That got a fresh sealing up as well before I removed the USB wiring from the harness, and I'll just explain a bit about that now. I've just used bullet connectors to reconnect these wires here, and then I can just pull them apart in future and just change one of them if I want to. But the whole plan with the USB charger is I'm probably just going to leave it off for the time being. Figure out something to do with that another time because I don't actually use it. I just use power banks to charge everything I need. So that can hold off for the time being, and then I'll look at another way to connect it off. So it's time for the homeward stretch now, and I just have to start connecting up all the connectors to each other and then stick them on the top of the frame where they belong. Then I move on to sticking the battery in the hope that that will work because it should be charged. Then it's a case of fitting the tank, which is obviously the easiest part of the job, and then it's time to start the bike. Right, that seems like battery, so that's mega. I'm just going to take it all apart, charge the battery up, start again tomorrow. Being mindful that there was smoke coming from underneath just now, so I don't know what that would be other than an electrical fire. So yeah, tomorrow. So it's the next morning, there's a freshly charged battery on there. I think that other charger I've got, that trickle charger that I connected up like permanently, I don't think it's very good because that battery took a full charge last night. It was on charge for hours. So I've put the battery in, the fuel tank is on, everything's connected. And I've got the door open just in case this thing starts catching fire or something like that, because I saw smoke coming out from in there last night. It could be some of the cleaning fluid that I put all over some of the stuff last night, and it might have gone on the generator. That's what I'm kind of hoping, but we'll see. So wish me luck. Door's open, the bike is there, and if this starts smoking, that bike's going out, and then hose pipe. Getting that. A little bit of choke maybe.
That sounds like an accelerator cable is stuck. No smoke coming from in there. So that was probably just some stuff burning off last night. But the bike started fine. Let's try it again. Just turn it on first. Oh my god! So there's definitely an accelerator cable stuck, but considering this is cold, it's actually firing up quite nicely, which means that it was probably that Hall effect sensor wire that was the issue. Either that, or I've fixed something along the lines and cleaned a load of wires up that have given this a bit of life that it needed. But now that I can start it, what I'm going to do is take the tank back off, start cable tying everything and making sure everything is free, and then hopefully it will run fine. But I'm not going to permanently connect the tank back up just in case this throttle keeps on sticking. But that pop absolutely scared the life out of me. But the bike started, so that's a win.
And with the new zip ties fitted, then this is what the top of the wiring loom now looks like. This is what the left hand side looks like, which is much more tidy, and the same with the right hand side. It's much better, it's out of the way, and it looks good.
As far as jobs go, this wasn't the hardest. It was just long, a bit time consuming and a little bit tedious on times. In my opinion, what I found was the moment I sat down on this and just plugged away, I was in the zone. I was in that, I don't know what they call it, but in my own head, just pulling each clip out, cleaning everything, cleaning the wires, checking them, and then putting it all back together. And I just continued that until we got to the point last night where I was able to start looking at connecting everything up, and now I can start it up. So this is going to be the first start with everything where it's going to stay. So here we go. Hopefully earlier on wasn't a fluke. I've done the Motronic reset. I hope that thing doesn't pop. Oh, the one more thing as well was the wire on the left hand side throttle body was just out. That's happened in the past before, so it's not something I was worrying about. I kind of knew that that was going to be the issue. So here we go. Naturally it is still cold, but that fires up so nice. And that just shows me that it has to have been the Motronic. If not, some of the other connectors, maybe the cleaning has helped it out. But for now, this bike is running fine. This bike is running fine. I'm over the moon. The work has paid off. And it just goes to show just a bit of patience, the right tools for the right job, and the bike is good to go again for another day. So I've been doing some videos on the Yamaha lately with the photography, so I'm looking forward to getting this out and doing something similar, but obviously just getting out there and enjoying the ride. So thank you very much for watching. I know this one's been a bit of a long one to watch, but hopefully it just shows you that just that little bit of attention to detail with all that wiring. And here we are again, we've got the bike running. It's sounding lovely and smooth. Those new injectors are amazing. It never sounded this smooth before. So I'm just ticking the boxes. It's had a good service, the wiring's been looked at, it's got new injectors. I'm hoping everything will last for a while now, so then I can get to that point where I've sorted out my new project, I get out on all the bikes and I can start stripping this down completely to then start powder coating everything and hopefully make it look as nice as it was when it first came out on the road, but a little bit OEM plus, shall we say. But that is it. That's this video complete. Thanks very much for watching. Bonus footage. This is hopefully the second start that you've seen. Mate, look at that. Mwah. Perfect. Just fires up sweet as a nut. Woo! Yeah. Next bike.